Hi folks, am I audible? Show of hands if I am not audible. Okay, all right. So essentially when I was asked to present a topic, I thought of a very important piece of functionality that we are building. And so just to give a quick introduction about myself, my name is Rahul Singh. I belong to the content platform team within Yahoo. So the previous speakers like Hanu and even Shankar talked about some of the stuff that they are doing. So they belong to the essentially the properties, the commerce and the media properties, and they use many of our platforms to drive their use cases, right? So that is where the common linkage is between all the different experiences that our verticals or end properties are trying to build, be it in the media world, news.yahoo.com, sports.yahoo.com, finance.yahoo.com, or in the commerce world, you saw the example of homes, right? They are all driven by the platform, right? And many of my teams work on the platform aspect. So I'm going to focus a lot on engineering, and which is the how. I think you have over the last few days you have heard a lot about the why part of it, right? Which is again around algorithms and why we are doing what we are doing, optimizations around that. But this is more of the how part of it, how to build a scalable, extensible platform. And I'll give you a brief overview of the different products that we have engineered. It is in some cases there is more breadth there, and I'll also focus the second part of my conversation on the knowledge graph itself, the common knowledge repository that we are trying to build for Yahoo. So what is the motivation or the intent behind having a content understanding and enrichment platform? So here are a few. So Yahoo is really all about content, right? There was a lot of focus even earlier that yes, we ingest a lot of content from various types of sources, be it the open sources like the Wikipedia or Freebase, be it the paid providers, the premium content. We also are now getting signals and content from Twitter and Facebook. So there is variety of content that is out there, and there is a need to extract and process content at scale, and that is essentially what we do to build a rich content pool. We also have to analyze the content quality. Why is it important? It's important to surface high quality content. It's also important not to surface the not so good quality of content, right? So the content could be spam, it could be adult. You have to suppress that, right? And we partner with our partners in the sciences team as well as other groups to build algorithms and engineer algorithms which will actually analyze the content quality. From our platforms, we surface scores, so we surface quality scores, we surface spam scores, adult scores, and those are used by the downstream properties to either show content or not show content. Enrich content with metadata. The gentleman here was talking about video, right? So a lot of I can give you a very specific example of content that we ingest in the video space, and a lot of times there is not enough metadata around that video to really like drive meaningful experiences for the end user. So what we are also trying to do is to using various techniques, like in the video space, we are actually doing a lot of speech to text as well as OCR kind of techniques, and we are trying to create that metadata so that we can ultimately build these very engaging user experiences. Creating linkages between related content, again a very important step, so that the user when you are there on, say, the video site, you'll see a related video, and you keep seeing and you're engaged to that, right? So you keep seeing more and more of that particular content. So it's very important to create those linkages. Of course, what hasn't been called out here is, so while we do a lot of content, it also has to be matched with the user signals. So it is essentially marrying off the content signals to the user signals for personalization. And even for that, this is very important. So the first set of capability that I'm going to focus on is really structured data extractions, right? And what is really structured data extraction all about? So we look at this knowledge acquisition flow, and essentially to really process any structured data, there are two phases. One is the learning phase, where you are actually, one is seeding lists and rules, and you are creating a particular knowledge base from those and creating that whole learning phase through that, right? Then comes the actual extraction phase. So you use these signals, the rules for surfacing, the models for extraction matching, the data set rules for validation, and you use those as part of the extraction phase. This is a platform that we have built in Yahoo for doing structured data extractions. This is a hosted platform. It's not accessible to folks outside Yahoo, but there is a piece of it which I'm going to highlight a bit later, which is also actually exposed as a service to any end user on the internet for doing structured data extractions. This is a piece that we built. So essentially, what is this about? So there is a clear need to write a workflow for extracting structured data, and as part of that workflow, you need some capabilities to say write rules, to have some kind of signals created which are done on standalone machines. Then we take those rules and we actually do computations on the grid. And there is also a human or a editorial piece involved. So that is again the other approach that Yahoo always takes. There is heavy editorial involvement for content curation, right? And one of the examples that I'll show, which is for search, so I can talk about this right now. So for search, what we display for many of the tail and the torso queries are what are called direct displays, and these are editorially curated content which are generated to drive more engaging user experiences, right? So in many of these cases, the blue links are not good enough, and through editorially driven workflows, we actually generate these direct displays. We also extract for vertical search experiences like blog search and recipe search. Part of the commerce mandate is, and the locals mandate is also to extract listings, right? And in this case, local listings, these include the store hours, the address, the phone number, etc. Here's an example of recipe search. The user search for lemon tart, and what you see as a result is actually structure extractions from a certain site. So what you see is an image. You see the ratings. You also see the various sites that it is, and of course in this particular case, ingredients is one more important content attribute here. Similarly, for, as I mentioned earlier, local listings. So here you have an example of users searching for Walmart, and what you see are all Walmart stores near his or her particular location, along with the map information. And as I mentioned, so this has the address, this has the contact number, and in many cases we also surface the hours of operation information. Yeah, so this would be of interest to you. This is called open.dapper.net, and here we support use cases for where you can go you can annotate a particular website and you can extract content from that particular website, right? So you can make the system learn by giving an example of a web page. So it could be, say, a Amazon.com web page. You are interested in the product details, the product code, the product description, the product price. All this is possible through this. So I would recommend that go try this out. Right. So this is one of our now biggest use cases for extracting structured data, and currently focusing on when you will see all the different steps, there is no common way to access those and actually link the content and the experiences, build experiences on top of it. So here is one initiative within Yahoo by which we intend to have that unified knowledge repository, have it centrally available with key information about all entities that we care about. So you could be any Yahoo vertical, and if you really care about that particular entity, it should be available in this particular repository. What is the value proposition here? So one thing we are saying is, of course, breadth has to be there. There has to be breadth, accuracy, as well as in many cases, depth of the data, right? And what we want to do is to in very agile ways launch new experiences by integrating this key knowledge from various domains in this central repository. And one of the key drivers is it has to be accessible all across Yahoo. So actually Shankar mentioned this, the representation of the entity, right? In some cases, yeah, indexing definitely helps, but this is the more generalized format, which is the graph format, to really traverse through all the different entities and the attributes that you are interested in, right? So if we are interested in Brad Pitt as an entity, of course you have all the filmography related information. You also have information around, okay, he's in this case partner is Angelina Jolie. You can also see that we can build these related entities case where if we search for Brad Pitt, we also will get George Clooney as a related entity if you are in the movies domain, right? So this is the type of traversal experience that we are trying to build, right? And as you can see, this is very generic, and based on a given requirement, you can traverse through this complete graph and extract information from it. So what is that specific typing that we are doing? I don't know if this is visible completely, but so on top of it is essentially we have said that, okay, entity type is actually an actor or a producer. What is very interesting is that there is a Wikipedia ID which we'll use for resolution, but there are also very property specific IDs. In this case, there is a Yahoo movie ID and there is also an IMDb ID. So all these can be used for disambiguation and further such purposes, right? So this is the example, and how is the pipeline looking like? So we have like three core phases. First is the knowledge acquisition phase, where we are acquiring data, as I mentioned, from various sources, including Wikipedia and DVpedia. There is a knowledge base, which is the repository of information, and we have certain allied processes around it. I'll talk more about it as well. And then there is the consumption side of it. So how does any vertical or any property consume data? So they do it through this particular phase, which is the knowledge consumption phase, which is through various ways like data pack generation. We'll expose data APIs. So what is knowledge acquisition all about? So acquisition is all about collecting, extracting and mining information about entities from multiple complementary sources, right? In this case, There could be, we reference open data sets like Wikipedia, which forms the backbone. We are also starting to use Freebase, right? Specialized data sources. Now, here is where the vertical angle comes in it, right? So, if you are looking at more richer information for domains, we would want to extract, say, for finance, sport, and entertainment. One use case that is not mentioned here, which we did recently, is for enhancing the geo data for location variants. And we took Wikipedia as one input, and the other one was OpenStreetMap, which has a huge repository of points of interest, which are not found anywhere else. Knowledge acquisition. So it consists of three parts, which is essentially, one is the data acquisition. These could be offline dumps, online fetching, crawling the web. Information extraction. These are essentially wrappers built over, which will operate on top of the raw data for doing information extraction. And here we leverage DBpedia as one of our key information extractors. So we use the DBpedia code, as well as we have built our own set of information extractors. Data mining is to actually look at aliases, and also, like in some of these cases, it could be search query logs, where you are interested in features for ranking and disambiguation. So search query logs become one key signal or a feature and that can be used downstream. What are the challenges here? The challenges are obviously with scale, volatility, heterogeneity, schema complexity, and of course some of the engineering challenges, like how do you bootstrap this particular graph, the knowledge graph, and how do you maintain it, right? The good thing being, Yahoo has huge set of Hadoop clusters, and we process all these data pipelines on Hadoop, and that is what is actually data acquisition at scale. Just a quick overview of how we do that extraction from Wikipedia. So what we do is we are always looking at one is the full database dumps, and the second are the incremental updates. So database dumps are received once a month. These are the full dumps, and then incremental updates are on a as and when it happens basis, right? So we are listening in through the IRC bots, and these are available. So we acquire the raw data. As I mentioned, this includes Wikitext as well as metadata. Then we do structured data extraction. So here we extract entities, relations, and attributes. We then do the data mining and enrichment part, which is aliasing, extracting features, categorizing, and cross-linking. And then it goes to the knowledge repository or the knowledge base. What are the types of information that we extract, say, from DBpedia? This is all structured data around URIs, labels, the abstracts, the info box, links, images, categories, etc. What we do as more advanced information extraction is the template. So a particular entity could belong in Wikipedia to a template. Like it could be a generic person profile, it could be an actor or a politician. Politician are represented by office holder as one of the templates. Tables, list extractions, we do type inference and mapping. This is about the data mining part. So what does the knowledge base look like? So knowledge is, as I mentioned earlier, it is a central repository. It's a unified knowledge base with a common ontology. And what we have decided is that for a wide variety of domains, the knowledge will be shallow and weakly typed. And for selected domains, like the example took about movies or TV, this will be richer and strongly typed. Of course, you had heard about Peter about how to represent, and we are trying to use all the common ontology and schemas as specified by the schema.org. Currently there are like 250 classes and 800 properties for modeling entities and relations. What are the challenges? Typical challenges are modeling temporality, provenance, localization. And what are the trade-offs then? So trade-offs are essentially expressiveness, comprehensiveness, and ease of use. Graph database is used here. As I mentioned, what was a logical representation of the graph? We actually use graph database for random access and online processing, and the Hadoop file system for offline batch processing. That's currently Neo4j. All right, so how does the ingestion process happen? What we are looking at is building these entities and relationships which are aligned with the common ontology. Then information is mapped and normalized to these standard schemas. Challenges being semantic discrepancies and obviously the growing schema complexity. Knowledge reconciliation is through co-reference resolution, and this is one of the key aspects here, is to really match blend objects which refer to the same object, right, across different data sources. So here we combine editorial, heuristics, as well as machine learning to do these matching and blending pieces. So favor the key decision points are favor domain dependent over domain agnostic resolution, because we know that in some cases the data has been curated and enriched by specialized folks, like I talked about the geo case, and here there is very specialized editorial teams which curate the geo data. So we know that information will be much more accurate and superior over any other piece of information. Use blocking and pairwise matching and merging, use soft linking and physical blending, and do offline reconciliation. Challenges being scaling reconciliation to data size and update frequencies. Some of these challenges were also highlighted in the previous talks as well. Right, scaling reconciliation to new domains and entity types, and making entity IDs persistent over full incremental updates. There is this whole editorial curation piece. So essentially manage the entity lifecycle through editorial curation in many cases. It could be interactive curation plus a batch import-export mode for small lists. What are the APIs that will be exposed? So for low level, it will be the CRUD APIs for managing the entity and the relationships, and of course the graph search part. And high level are ingest, reconcile, curate, explore, and export. Overall, the size so far is about 10 million entities, 10 million of relationships, and 30 million attributes. Consumption of data. Again, this is more right now it is more internal to Yahoo. To export and index entity and relationships on top of a search platform. So you can do faster lookups, right, which are very critical during serving time. Expose entity relations via lookup APIs, and also expose entity relations via structured search APIs. There are also these approaches for custom data pack generation. This could be true, say, for when we looked at the commerce or the homes use case, right? So we might actually export a certain type of information for a vertical. These are few of the challenges in around data quality. Challenges around coverage, the number of domains and entities that we cover, around richness, number of attributes and relations for each entity type, comprehensiveness, which is like how many important entities and relationships and facts are covered through the knowledge base, correctness, type correctness. So this is the key to categorize content, right? And you got to get the type of entities right. Interlinking, precision and recall for of reconciliation is very important, as well as of course freshness. Many of these entities are sensitive, time sensitive. there are cases like to handle popularity, trending, or decay of those entities. So these kind of use cases are also a challenge. This is something which is already out there. So based on the knowledge graph, what you see is when you search for Jennifer Aniston on the Yahoo search page, what you see are all related people. In these cases, many of them are actors. So essentially, how we are building this information is to look at the Wikipedia, the lists, tables, and pages, and building these core references, and then building that logic for showing this related entities lookup. Okay, so that piece was about structured data, and I don't know if you folks wondered, but there are a lot of cases where even within structured data, there is unstructured data, like say product description, or when you are looking at an article, it is just some text of information without too much structure in it, right? So that is another key capability that we provide as a platform. And why we are doing that? As I mentioned earlier, we are trying to do all these enrichments to build these highly engaging user experiences on the front end. So once you annotate the data, with a lot of these metadata or insights, you are able to link a lot of these content better and build better user experiences. So types of enrichments that we do are classification. There is a Yahoo content taxonomy that has been defined, and we use that. Entity detection and ranking, that is again a core feature. And we also have models which generate these spam and quality scores. How do we do it? So essentially, as part of the whole content processing pipeline, we have for a document, we have a document processing pipeline, which is document in this case could be a web document, it could be even be an email or any form of unstructured text. What we are doing is we have actually built a natural language processing based framework. It's very similar to Uhima, if you guys know about. Has anyone used Uhima? So essentially, it's a framework for building these annotators over for text processing, and that is the capability that we have also built. This is why I gave reference to Uhima, is because ours is Yahoo proprietary, but it's very similar in terms of some of the architecture and concepts. It's a highly configurable and extensible document processing pipeline. Supports rapid experimentation. So this is one of the key needs what we get from various of our verticals and the labs and the sciences teams, right? That we have to support rapid experimentation either through pre-built document processor modules or to help them write their own. And this is what the framework provides. You also have the capability to run advanced classifiers inline. Earlier, you have to actually stitch a lot of things together using, say, Perl, Python scripts. But now you have the capability to run. Even it was a lot of C, C++ code. So what we are doing is we are doing a lot of JNI calls. But now we have moved to a Java-based model, and this is being run inline. So what is really document analysis? To give you an example, this is a piece of text, and there is various information that is mentioned here. So how do we figure out and how do we associate structure to it? So essentially, what we do is to fall back on natural language processing. So what you see is that in this case there are names being identified, there are phrases, there are obviously the blank spaces are the separators, there is also date, and there is a place. So we have built the capability to, and we have built detectors by which we are able to essentially identify all these building blocks. And what this leads to is, so the base, the first class object here is what is called an annotation. And annotation is used as a methodology or a mechanism or a data structure to add metadata as an enrichment to a piece of text. These are some definitions of what an annotation really means. So there are essentially spans which mark the portions of text. There are span lists which mark the non-contiguous portions of text. Span lists themselves can contain spans, and span list itself has children. They've combined together, so span and span list combine together to form what is called a span tree. And span tree is then named, and you can traverse through it in which forms the logical view of the document. Examples of span tree is an HTML tree or a linguistics tree. Span trees are created on string fields of the document. Now this is the way the complete information is organized as an annotation, and this is an example of it. I will not go into too much of detail, but this is essentially is that, right? So it consists of multiple spans and span lists, and then we club logical pieces together to form words, separators, compound words, and then the final thing gets aggregated as a document. So how is the document processing chain like? So as I mentioned earlier, it goes through a configurable set of document processors or logic that will run to process this particular document. In this case, it's a Wikipedia article. You configure a workflow, which is a document processing workflow, and finally you get what are the highlighted entities or pieces of text within that. This is an example of our document processor chain. And as I mentioned earlier, there are certain pre-built components which are available, like the text. So we have the tag parser, which will parse all the HTML tags. Then you have the text box creator, the language detector, the word parser, phrase recognizer to recognize various phrases which are present in the dictionary. This is the overall architecture. As you can see, it's pretty modular. So you have the built-in document processors. The users can define their own. There is a whole framework, which is the document and the annotation model and the document processing framework, and we have kept the deployment and configuration separate. So this is again the power of the platform. Right. So this is almost the last piece of what I was going to talk about. So this is around. So we are doing all this processing, right? What is the meaning of processing all this content at scale, and what are the insights that we are getting out of it? So what we have done is we actually collect when we run the content processing pipeline, we actually collect metrics about this content. And content, as you know, consists of articles, images, videos. These are published to a dashboard, and we aggregate for the producer level metrics to see, okay, how are our product producers doing, right? So when we are getting content from these paid providers, right? Is this content engaging? Is this high quality? Those are the attributes that we are trying to measure. So we look at essentially things like direct metrics, which is essentially the number of articles that are flowing in the pipeline. We also look at the number of entities that are discovered within that content. Then there are derived metrics. So we take so some of these are algorithms that we have built, which includes the profanity score, and there is this industry term called the readability score, which is essentially to identify the level or proficiency of the user to be reading that article. So is this article readable by, say, a 10th grader in the school, right? So that is a readability score that we generate, and then we finally couple it with the data that is produced by another group in Yahoo, which is around the user engagement metrics. So essentially, how has the article performed? What is the time spent on the article? What is the click-through rate for that particular article? Why we are doing this is essentially to create a feedback loop, to curate content such that all that content which is being ingested, it is curated in such a way that it becomes engaging when it is surfaced, right? So that is one of the intent, and also since in many cases Yahoo is paying for the content, we got to measure the feed providers' effectiveness. And of course, then you also know that we can measure, okay, how much or what type of content is being read on any particular Yahoo property like Yahoo News or Finance by looking at, okay, what was the average readability score of that article. So actually my time is up, but things around video metadata enrichments. Any questions?
Hi. Why did you choose Neo4j instead of something like Sparkle, like a triple store, which can handle Sparkle and reasoning?
Sure. So this is something that we have started off with. We will look at other RDF databases in the future, right? This is currently more for rapid experimentation and ease of use internally, right? To build at some point we are going to look at things like, can we query it better using the Sparkle language, and what is the performance characteristics of the graph database? Definitely. So we do have other candidates, other products that we want to consider. So Neo4j is for now the choice, but yes, it will change. It is likely to change later.
Okay, similar related question. Why use proprietary framework? Why not use Vima?
So okay, this was more of a choice that we made in terms of the capabilities that we already had in terms of the base platforms. So some of the base platforms are already available to us, and we actually extracted. So we did two things, right? So one is we use that base framework as our core capability, and we also as part of an earlier framework, we had logic which was already written, right? And this is so many of though there are generic processors, but there is also very specific capabilities that are document processing logic that we have also built on top of it. So some of the entity detection and ranking pieces that we do are actually very specific to the way we do entity detection and ranking within Yahoo, right? So that is one example. Though, so that the idea is not to discount. So there is one disclaimer here that we can always integrate like recently we have integrated some of the open source stuff within the framework itself. Right, so you always have that capability to do it. The framework provisions for it. So if there is a feature or capability that is available outside as part of any other open source framework, we have the power. This framework is extensible to integrate it within our platform. So,
actually, Rahul, just in the interest of time, maybe you should approach the speaker at the break. We have one last presentation in this session just before the tea break. I also want to announce that please stay back for the student presentations with the intent of arranging the sessions. A lot of you were asking in the hallway conversations, what does the industry do with all the science being taught? So we saw that through what Yahoo India R&D is doing. And equally important is what could happen at campuses. So we are just highlighting two student presentations for that. So please do stay back after the tea break for those sessions also. So right now we'll call the next last presenter in this session just before the tea break. Thanks for the